Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
To go all in means to set fire to the safety nets that everyone else clings to. It means taking the one pursuit that keeps you awake at night and refusing to share your energy with anything that dilutes it. Most people live halfway. They want the dream, but they want the cushion as well. They want the result, but they want the escape hatch if it fails. They want to be exceptional, but they want to keep the comfort of being ordinary when the work feels heavy. That middle ground is where ambition goes to rot. You either go all in or you stay average. There is no in between. Average is the quiet consequence of divided energy. When you give only pieces of yourself, the world only gives you pieces in return. Going all in is terrifying because it leaves you exposed, but it is the only condition under which greatness is even possible. Every empire, every movement, every name carved into history was built by those who understood that the halfway life is already a form of death. The one who goes all in does not keep a door open to retreat. They lock themselves into the battlefield until either they win or they are consumed. That pressure transforms them into something unrecognizable to the average. It sharpens decisions, removes distractions, and forges resilience because failure is not an option when every bridge behind you has already been burned. The average will never understand this. They will call it reckless. They will call it madness. But those same voices will later call it genius when the results appear. The line between madness and mastery has always been the willingness to commit fully. The reason average dominates society is because safety dominates behavior. People will trade greatness for predictability without hesitation. They will choose a mediocre guarantee over a glorious uncertainty. They convince themselves they are being rational, but rationality is the language of fear. To go all in is to silence that fear and gamble on yourself with a weight that forces you to grow. The average never gets tested enough to rise because they always leave themselves an exit. Without pressure, they never evolve. With pressure, they would discover a version of themselves they never imagined possible. The refusal to go all in is the refusal to meet the higher self that only emerges under fire. Every man or woman who ever altered the course of their field was marked by obsession, not balance. They starved other priorities until only one remained. The average person sees sacrifice as loss, but the obsessed see sacrifice as clarity. They cut away everything that does not serve the mission because they know the brain can only hold so much. To dilute energy is to dilute impact. To concentrate energy is to multiply it. Going all in is not just a decision. It is an alchemy. It transforms hours into results at a speed that dabblers can never match. This is why those who give everything move faster than those who give half. The universe does not reward balance, it rewards singularity. To go all in requires a willingness to be misunderstood. When you choose to pour everything into one pursuit, the world will not clap. It will sneer. Friends will say you changed. Family will say you are selfish. Strangers will mock your fixation. But that resistance is proof you are on the right path. Average minds cannot tolerate the sight of someone who refuses to live like them. Your obsession holds up a mirror to their compromise. Your intensity reminds them of the risks they never took. That discomfort will be expressed as criticism, but if you hold steady, those same voices will one day pretend they believed in you all along. The truth is that the only real security is in going all in. Average creates the illusion of safety but guarantees mediocrity. When you divide your life between comfort and ambition, you get neither. You are never fully safe because comfort decays, and you are never fully great because ambition is starved. Going all in looks risky, but in reality, It is the only strategy that forces you into the territory where transformation lives. When everything is on the line, you adapt faster. You fight harder. You find solutions that average minds never discover because they never had to. Pressure reveals possibilities that comfort conceals. Think of the heroes remembered across time. None of them lived balanced lives. They were consumed. They lived in extremes. They lived in the tension of all or nothing. Their decisions were not polite, measured compromises. They were radical commitments. That is why their names echo while the average remain forgotten. Balance is for those who wish to be invisible. Obsession is for those who wish to be immortal. You cannot have both. You cannot chase legacy and chase comfort in the same breath. One will always kill the other. To go all in is to decide which one you want written on your story. The average life is defined by hesitation. It is marked by almost starts, half-finished pursuits, and abandoned goals. It is haunted by what-ifs and could-have-beens. Going all in eliminates hesitation because you know there is no fallback. You either rise or you collapse, but you do not stand still. And in that intensity, something extraordinary happens. You unlock flow states. You unlock resilience. You unlock the kind of creativity that desperation breeds. The average never sees this side of themselves because they never let the pressure build long enough to reveal it. They release the pressure too soon and settle back into comfort. To go all in is to claim responsibility in its purest form. It is to say the outcome rests entirely on me. There is no scapegoat, no backup, no excuse. That level of accountability terrifies most, but it is also the secret ingredient of power. When you cannot run, you rise. When you cannot excuse, you adapt. When you cannot retreat, you conquer. This is why the average remain average. They always leave themselves a way out. The extraordinary slam the door and throw away the key. Neuroscience strips away the illusion of freedom. It tells you that 95% of your daily actions are automated habits. That means almost everything you do is not a choice, but a reflex scripted by repetition. You wake, move, speak, and react on patterns so ingrained that your conscious mind barely touches them. This is why average is not just a risk, it is the default. If you do not interrupt the script, it will keep running until your final day. You can dream of change, you can talk about ambition, but unless you break the program, you are nothing more than a passenger. This is the brutal truth most avoid. They cling to the fantasy of control while living as slaves to patterns they never questioned. If you want more than average, you must take the reins with force. That means going all in, because half measures never rewrite code. Habits are efficient, but they are also merciless. They conserve energy by repeating the familiar, even when the familiar is killing you. The brain prefers what it knows, not what is right. If you do not direct it, it will build chains out of comfort and call it protection. You will think you are safe, when in reality you are caged. Comfort is not a shield, it is programming. It keeps you predictable, manageable, and contained. That is why years can vanish without change. You are not failing because you lack willpower. You are failing because you are running a script that was never designed for greatness. Comfort installed it, and comfort will defend it. Only obsession can uninstall it. To go all in is to declare war on the automation that has been steering your life. It is not about motivation. It is about rewriting the operating system through force of repetition in the direction you choose. New habits are carved into the brain through ruthless consistency, not occasional effort. The brain resists at first because every new behavior costs more energy than an old one. That resistance is where most people quit. They run back to comfort, and comfort absorbs them again. But if you refuse to stop, if you hammer the new habit until it embeds, The brain concedes. It begins to automate the new pattern just as it once automated the old. That is the real prize of obsession. Not a burst of change, but the creation of a new subconscious that works for you instead of against you. The danger is in underestimating how deep the automation runs. Most people believe they are making conscious choices throughout the day. They are not. They are puppets dancing to the strings of habits installed years ago. A child taught fear carries it into adulthood. A teenager taught laziness repeats it into his 30s. An adult who never questions his routines dies with them intact. Without conscious rebellion, you are nothing but a script. To go all in is to slice through that illusion and take ownership of the code. It is to say that your future will not be dictated by your past. Average is not a state, it is inertia. It is the outcome of running programs you never examined. That is why it feels safe, because it is easy. Safety is what the brain craves. The problem is that safety also erases potential. You cannot be extraordinary by following the grooves carved by comfort. Those grooves lead nowhere. The extraordinary emerge because they disrupt the flow. They fight the 95% with the 5% of conscious choice they are given. They use that sliver to design new patterns that eventually dominate. That sliver is where destiny is decided. Comfort thrives on invisibility. It does not shout, it whispers. It does not strike, it lulls. It convinces you that tomorrow will be the same, and that is acceptable. But tomorrow being the same is death in disguise. Every day that repeats without growth is a day stolen from what you could have been. Comfort tricks you into thinking you are protecting yourself, but in reality, you are programming yourself for mediocrity. Every repeated action writes the script deeper until the chance to change fades. That is why urgency is not luxury, it is necessity. You cannot wait to rewrite the code. You must seize the chance while you still can. Those who go all in understand this. They know that the mind is not neutral ground. It is always being shaped, either by comfort or by will. If you are not installing new patterns through conscious effort, comfort is installing its own. The mind does not stay empty. It fills with whatever you allow. To go all in means you flood it with obsession until nothing else survives. It means you overwrite the old code with a new one so aggressively that the past loses its grip. That is how transformation becomes permanent. This war is fought daily, not in grand gestures but in repeated acts of defiance. Each time you push through discomfort, you weaken the hold of the old script. Each time you stay when you want to quit, you write a new line of code. Each time you prioritize the obsession over the distraction, you shift the balance of power. This is why average cannot survive when you go all in. Average feeds on neglect and obsession starves it. Over time, your subconscious begins to run the very patterns you once had to force. That is how you know you have won. The average man never sees this victory because he never fights the battle. He assumes his habits are his nature. He accepts the program as destiny. But nature is not the final word and destiny is not written. Both are shaped by obsession. Neuroscience exposes the truth, but it is your choice that decides whether you remain average or ascend. The brain will automate either way. The only question is which direction you program it to follow. Science has already mapped the battlefield. It takes roughly 66 days for the brain to rewire itself into a new habit loop. That means the first 2 months of any pursuit are war zones where the old self refuses to die and the new self has not yet been born. Most quit here, not because they are incapable, but because they mistake boredom for failure. They feel the drag of repetition, the grind of sameness, and assume nothing is happening. But deep beneath the surface, neural pathways are being carved. Every repetition lays another brick. Every act of consistency strengthens the circuit. If you quit before 66 days, you never allow the bridge to finish. You remain standing on the side of who you used to be, staring at the other shore but never crossing. Identity is not declared, it is constructed. You do not become a runner by announcing it. You become one when the act of running has become automatic. You do not become a writer by saying it. You become one when the act of writing is woven into your days like breath. This is why the first 2 months matter more than talent, inspiration, or luck. You are not just building a habit, you are building a self. The world only sees the external action, but within you, the scaffolding of identity is being welded together. If you quit too early, the scaffolding collapses, and you return to the comfort of the old version, pretending you tried when you only abandoned the construction site before it was finished. Boredom is the guardian of transformation. It stands in front of the gate with folded arms, daring you to keep going when every cell in your body demands novelty. Those who crave constant excitement never last long enough to see the shift. They treat the repetition as punishment, not as the very price of change. But boredom is not a signal to stop. It is the crucible. It is proof that the brain is resisting the rewiring. Push through it, and the repetition will burn into the subconscious until it no longer feels forced. Fail here, and you remain a prisoner of inconsistency. The problem with most people is not that they lack ambition. It is that they lack patience with boredom. They want the identity now. They want the result now. But identity is earned at the cellular level. The brain does not move quickly for your convenience. It requires proof over time. It asks whether you are serious enough to endure when there is no visible return. If you endure long enough, the brain accepts the new loop and begins to automate it. That is the moment identity locks in place. The act is no longer something you do, it is something you are. But that only happens on the other side of boredom's desert. Quitting before the loop is formed is not just stopping the task, it is killing the new self before birth. You betray yourself twice, once by surrendering the pursuit, and again by reinforcing the identity of someone who does not finish. Each early exit teaches your subconscious that your word cannot be trusted. That lesson is powerful, and it lingers. This is why inconsistency feels heavier over time. You begin to associate every attempt with the expectation of failure, because you never stayed long enough to prove yourself wrong. Consistency is not glamorous. It does not feel heroic. It feels repetitive, ordinary, even dull. But that dullness is the very forge of identity. Each act of showing up, each strike against boredom, each repetition in the absence of excitement is a declaration. It tells the brain that this is who we are now. Eventually, the declaration becomes truth. You no longer force yourself to act. The loop carries you. The act becomes identity. At that moment, the struggle transforms into power. To go all in is to surrender to this process. It is to understand that the glory comes after the 66 days, not before. It is to accept that transformation is less about fire and more about endurance. The fire may ignite you in the beginning, but endurance is what carries you through the dull grind where identity is reshaped. If you cannot endure boredom, you cannot change. If you cannot repeat when it feels meaningless, you will never reach the point where it becomes effortless. The brain is indifferent to your feelings. It responds only to consistency. It does not care if you are inspired. It does not care if you are motivated. It only cares whether you show up. Each repetition adds weight until the new identity outweighs the old. That is why quitting early is so tragic. You may have been days away from the shift, days away from crossing the threshold, but you stopped, and the old self took back the throne. To build a new identity, you must bleed boredom. You must endure the 6 days not as a countdown, but as a battlefield where every step forward is a strike against the old you. Each day you stay in the fight is another day your subconscious bends. Each day you repeat is another day you erase the excuse of average. By the end, you do not just have a habit. You have a self that aligns with your vision. The amygdala is the alarm bell of the human brain. In just 80 milliseconds, it reacts to threat. Faster than thought, faster than reason, faster than words, it floods the body with urgency. This was a gift in the ancient world. That speed kept your ancestors alive when shadows in the tall grass meant predators. That speed meant hesitation did not kill you. But in the modern world, the amygdala still fires as if every risk is a predator. It cannot tell the difference between a lion in the dark and the chance of failure in business, art, or ambition. Most people let that alarm dictate their lives. They retreat at the first spark of fear. They interpret risk as danger and run back to the comfort of the known. This is why they never cross into extraordinary. Their entire existence is controlled by a mechanism that was designed for survival, not greatness. The obsessed interpret that same alarm differently. They feel the same surge of adrenaline, the same jolt of fear, but they translate it into a signal that something is worth chasing. Instead of retreating, they move forward with urgency. Fear becomes currency. It becomes proof that they are stepping into territory that matters. Every moment of fear is invested like a payment toward growth. The average hoard their fear, clutching it like misers, and in doing so, they starve. The obsessed spend it recklessly, knowing the return is transformation. This is the separation line. It is not that the obsessed feel less fear. It is that they have trained themselves to treat fear as an invitation instead of a command to retreat. To invest fear means to feel the rush in your body and decide not to run, but to use it as fuel. That trembling, that racing heartbeat, that dry mouth is proof that the stakes are high. For the average, those symptoms mean stop. For the obsessed, those symptoms mean go. They know the amygdala is a blunt instrument, not a wise teacher. It cannot distinguish between risk that ends life and risk that builds it. To live fully, you must override its panic. You must spend fear the way others spend money, pouring it into opportunities that terrify you, because terror is the signpost that says this is the path where growth lives. Fear is the tax for greatness. No one gets to bypass it. Those who remain average are those who refuse to pay. They hoard their fear, staying safe, staying predictable, staying small. But their safety is an illusion, because safety itself decays. The job they protect can vanish. The relationships they cling to can crumble. The comfort they defend eventually turns into regret. The obsessed understand this. They pay the tax up front, enduring the fear of risk, so they can claim rewards the timid will never see. Every leap into fear is an investment in becoming someone larger than the amygdala's programming. You cannot kill fear. You cannot silence the amygdala. It will fire in 80 milliseconds as long as you are alive. The goal is not to remove it. The goal is to repurpose it. The obsessed learn to thank the alarm for ringing because it means they have found the edge worth walking. The alarm does not paralyze them. It points them. It reveals where the average will stop. And in that space beyond, the obsessed carve their name. This is why so few rise. They see the edge and retreat. The obsessed see the edge and step forward, because they have made peace with fear as the price of admission. Every empire, every discovery, every work of art that survived the ages was born in defiance of the amygdala's alarm. Imagine how many inventions never arrived because fear whispered too loudly. Imagine how many lives were left unlived because the 80-millisecond response froze someone at the edge of change. The obsessed are the ones who broke through that chain. They heard the alarm and still moved. That single difference rewrote history. It is not intelligence, not talent, not luck. It is obsession strong enough to treat fear as currency and spend it without hesitation. Fear feels expensive because it demands more than comfort. It demands the chance of failure, humiliation, and loss. That is why average people hoard it. They cannot bear the cost, but obsession makes the cost tolerable. When your vision burns hotter than your fear, the price no longer feels impossible. It feels necessary.